College football is about to get underway again soon, and I figured in this video I would do my own ranking of the upcoming college football season. I will rank the teams that I think would fit into the AP Top 25, so let's go over those teams right now. At number 25, I have the Boise State Broncos. Now, in this ranking, I felt that I had to include a group of six team. This year, with college football, there are six conferences that fall into the group of six, which used to be the group of five. And those are, of course, the newly formed Pac 12, which was basically resurrected from the old Pac 12, but it's no longer a power conference. It is now a group of six team, and that joins the MAC, the American Conference USA, the Mountain West, and the Sun Belt conferences. And I think that the Pac 12 is probably going to be the best group of six conference this season. Perhaps the American may have another team that's good again this year, but we don't know yet. But I did put Boise State at number 25 because I think that they have a really good coach in Spencer Danielson, and their starting quarterback is Maddox Madsen, who has started for Boise State for the last few years. And in fact, he was the one that took Boise State into the college football playoffs at the end of the 2024 season. At number 24, I have the Iowa Hawkeyes, and Kirk Ferentz, of course, is still the head coach of Iowa, and at this point, we don't know who the quarterback is going to be who will start. It's between Hank Brown and Jeremy Heklinski. And so we're not sure who the starting quarterback will be, but Iowa always seems to have a really good defense. So I figured I would put them at number 24 going into this season. At number 23, I have the Houston Cougars. And last year, I believe they were in the postseason rankings at the end of last season. So I think that they're going to be good again. I mean, Willie Fritz is their head coach, and their starting quarterback is Connor Wigman. So I think that they're going to be a good team this year. So I ranked them at number 23. At number 22, I have SMU. And Rhett Lashley is, of course, their head coach. And Kevin Jennings is the starting quarterback. And he was the quarterback that took SMU into the college football playoff in the 2024 season. So I think that they definitely deserve a spot in the top 25 going into this season. At number 21, I put the Utah Utes, and they have a new head coach, Morgan Scalley, who was promoted whenever Kyle Whittingham went to go to Michigan. And their starting quarterback is Devin Dampier, and they were a good team last year, so I figured I would rank them going into this season. I think that they'll be a pretty good team. At number 20, I have Washington, and this is Jed Fish's third year coaching at Washington, and I think that they have a pretty good, favorable schedule this year. I think that they could easily win 9 games this season, so I ranked them at number 20, and their quarterback is going to be Demond Williams Jr., and he's returning from last year. At number 19, I have the Louisville Cardinals with Jeff Brom as their head coach, and Lincoln Keenholz as their quarterback, and he came from Ohio State. So I think that Louisville is probably going to be pretty good this year, and they could potentially be a threat to. I bel- I think they play Miami this year, and they could potentially be a threat to Miami. At number 18, I put Tennessee in there with Josh Heupel, and right now we don't know who the starting quarterback will be for Tennessee, but Tennessee's been good the last couple years. Last year they didn't do quite as well as they did the previous year when they did make the college football playoff. And right now the quarterbacks that could be starting are Faison Brandon or George McIntyre. So we'll just have to see who will be their starting quarterback, and we'll just go from there. At number 17, I have Penn State. And since Penn State hired Matt Campbell as their head coach, and I think that they're going to be better because it seemed that under James Franklin, they just could not win the big games. And under Matt Campbell, they will have Rocco Becht as their starting quarterback. He came with Matt Campbell from Iowa State, and Matt Campbell has really done pretty well at Iowa State. I mean, Iowa State was one of the worst teams in college football, and he's kind of brought them back a little bit. And with him coming to Penn State, I think that that's going to be good. And Penn State has a very good schedule in the Big Ten this season. So I think that they will actually do pretty good. And they could potentially win 10, maybe 11 games this season. So we'll just have to see how they do. I know their first four games are going to be pretty easy. Their first three are their non-conference games, and then their opening Big Ten game is going to be Wisconsin at Beaver Stadium. So I think that they will do pretty well this season. At number 16, I have BYU. And of course, Kalari Satake is their head coach, and their starting quarterback is going to be Bear Bachmeier. And I think that BYU is going to be good again this year. Last year they went 11-1 in the regular season, and they just missed the college football playoff last season. But there were a lot of SEC teams that made the playoff. Plus, there were two group of five teams that made it into the playoff last season. So I think that's one of the reasons why they didn't make it into the playoffs. At number 15, I have USC, and this is, I think, their fifth season under Lincoln Riley. And this season, their starting quarterback will be Jaden Mayava. And I think that USC is going to be pretty good this season. They do have a bit of a tough schedule, but I think that they could still win at least 9 games this season. Maybe even 10 games. But I know Lincoln Riley's probably going to be on the hot seat if he doesn't do well this season. So who knows? He may not be the coach going into next season if USC doesn't do very well this season like they've done in the last few seasons, where they've been expected to do well, but they just haven't met expectations. At number 14, I ranked LSU, and I think that this is probably a good spot for them. I don't want to really rank them higher because this is their first season under Lane Kiffin, and now their quarterback is Sam Levitt from Arizona State. So I think that LSU is going to be pretty good, and they could potentially make the playoffs this season under Lane Kiffin because he took Ole Miss to the playoffs last year, and unfortunately, he left Ole Miss right before the playoffs started. So he had transferred to LSU, and so Pete Golding took over as coach for Ole Miss going into the playoffs. At number 13, I have Michigan. And Michigan just got a new coach, Kyle Whittingham, and they will have their starting quarterback as Bryce Underwood, who was their quarterback last season. And I think Michigan's going to be a pretty good team going into this season. At number 12, I have Arizona and or I'm sorry, Alabama. And Alabama is this is Kalen DeBoer's third season in Alabama. Now, right now we don't know who the starting quarterback will be because it's between Kalen Russell and Austin Mack. Now, Austin Mack played in the Rose Bowl against Indiana, and I thought he did pretty well whenever he was playing as quarterback in the Rose Bowl. So we'll just have to see if he gets awarded starting quarterback going into this season. But I think Alabama might do okay this season. They do have a bit of a tough schedule, but I can't see why they wouldn't win like 8 or 9 games this season. I know that's a low expectation for Alabama fans, being that, they just had Nick Saban as their head coach, and he was a great coach, and he took them into the playoffs so many times during his tenure at Alabama. And I know that the fans have a high expectation for Kalen DeBoer, but it might be difficult for him this season. But I think that Kalen DeBoer is a good coach because he took Washington into the playoffs in at the end of the 2023 season. So I think that Alabama will be good once again this season. At number 11, I put Ole Miss. And Ole Miss, of course, is now under Pete Golding. And their starting quarterback will be Trinidad Chambliss. And he did really well in the playoffs. They almost won in the semifinals, but Miami ended up beating them in the semifinals. But I know a lot of the sports commentators were just praising Trinidad Chambliss at how good of a quarterback that he was. So that's why I ranked them at number 11. Now, going into the top 10, I have Texas Tech ranked at number 10, and Joey McGuire is their head coach. Now, they will not have Brendan Sorsby as their starting quarterback because of the whole drama that went on during the off season with Brendan Sorsby, and being that he ended up deciding not to play for Texas Tech this season. So Will Hammond will likely be the starting quarterback this season, and I think that Texas Tech will probably be one of the best teams in the Big 12, and I think they have a pretty easy schedule this season. So I rank them at number 10. At number 9, I have Oklahoma. Now, Oklahoma did really well last year. They did make it into the college football playoffs last season under Brent Venables, and their starting quarterback will be John Mateer, and he was a good quarterback last season. So I think that Oklahoma will be pretty good. Now I know they have some tough games coming up. I know in week 2 they play Michigan at Michigan, so that could be a tough game for Oklahoma. I don't think they're going to win that game. I think Michigan will win that game, being that it's being played at the Big House in Ann Arbor. So we'll just have to see how well they do this season, but I have them ranked at number 9. At number 8, I have Texas A&M, and this is Mike Elko's third season, I believe, as head coach, and their starting quarterback will be Marcel Reed, and they did really well last year, of course, because they did make the college football playoffs, and I think that they'll once again have a pretty good season this season, so I rank them at number 8. At number 7, I have Miami. Now, of course, Miami made the national championship game last year, and they were pretty much probably one drive away from winning the national championship, but they lost because Carson Beck threw an interception to Indiana, and Indiana won the national championship. Now, Mario Cristobal, of course, is a good coach, and I think that Miami is going to do well again this season. They have a fairly easy schedule. I think their hardest games are going to be against Louisville, and I think they play SMU, and I know for sure they play Notre Dame again. So those are going to be probably their toughest games. And their starting quarterback will be Darian Mensah, who they brought over from Duke last season, and well, he was at Duke last season, and they brought him over in the off season here. So I think that I think that Miami will be pretty good again, and I think they have a chance at potentially making the college football playoff again this season. At number 6, I have Texas. Now, to some people, that may seem a little low, but I figured I'm going to be a little cautious here. Texas has a very tough season. This season they have a very tough schedule this season. Now they have a really good coach in Steve Sarkisian, and their starting quarterback will be Arch Manning. And in week 2, they host Ohio State in Austin. So I think that they actually have a chance at winning that game. I know I've talked to some Ohio State fans that I know, and they think Ohio State's going to win, but I honestly think Texas might win this game because they are hosting it this year. Last season, I thought they were going to win going in going to the shoe at Ohio State, but Ohio State ended up winning. But I think this season they'll do better. I know they kind of had some rough games last season, but Arch Manning is a pretty good quarterback, and so I think that Texas will be pretty good this season, and they could potentially make the playoffs again. So I know they didn't make the playoffs last season, but they did in 2024, and so I think that they'll be good again this season. At number 5, I have Indiana, the reigning national champions from last season. And of course, their quarterback, Fernando Mendoza, went to the NFL. He's now with the Las Vegas Raiders. And Kurt Signetti this is going to be his third season as head coach at Indiana. And I think he's probably the best college football coach right now. And he brought Josh Hoover over from TCU as the starting quarterback. So I think that Indiana's going to have a good season again, and they could potentially make the playoffs for the third year in a row. And they do have a bit of a tougher schedule this year because they play Ohio State and they play Michigan and they play USC. So they do have a tougher schedule, but I think that they still can win at least 10 games this season, potentially 11 or 12 again. So we'll just have to see how well they do. But I have them ranked at number 5. At number 4, I have Georgia. And Georgia has Kirby Smart, of course, as their head coach. And their starting quarterback will be Gunnar Stockton once again. And I think Georgia's probably going to be the best team in the SEC this season. And they have a pretty easy schedule. So I think that they're going to do well. So that's why I have them ranked at number 4. At number 3, I have Ohio State. Now, I did not rank them at number 1 like some other people may want to rank them as. I think that we should rank them at number 3 this season because they do have a new offensive coordinator because their previous offensive coordinator went on to be a head coach. And Ohio State's head coach is Ryan Day, and he's a very good coach. And their starting quarterback will be Julian Sayin, and he's a really good quarterback. Now, last season, I don't know why they kept ranking Ohio State at number 1. I don't think they should have been ranked at number 1 the whole time there because I think that Indiana was better than they were, and they actually proved it in the Big Ten championship game that they were actually better than Ohio State because Ohio State hadn't really played anyone last season, but Indiana played several tough games last season, and as soon as they beat Oregon, I think that they should have been bumped up to at least number 2 or number 1 in the AP Top 25. So, and I didn't think that they would win against Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game, but I was actually pleasantly surprised when they did win that game, and I was very happy that they won that game. And I thought as soon as they won that game, I thought they can beat anybody in college football, and they did. They won the national championship game. So that's why I'm being a little cautious and ranking Ohio State at number 3 going into this season. At number 2, I have Notre Dame. Now, Notre Dame has a very easy schedule this season, and of course, they're an independent team, which I don't agree with. I think that they need to join a conference, and I think that they do need to play some tougher games, but I think that their 2 toughest games that they're going to play this season are BYU and Miami, and I think that Miami could beat them once again this season. I know they lost to Miami last season, and that's one of the reasons why they did not make the college football playoffs last season is because they lost to Miami. And also I think that independence has a factor in that as well. But going into this season, now as long as they're ranked in the top 12 going into the whenever the college football playoff committee releases their final rankings, as long as Notre Dame is in the top 12, they will make the playoffs, which I don't agree with that. I don't agree with giving teams special treatment just because they're independent. And once again, I think that Notre Dame needs to join a conference, but their starting quarterback will be CJ Carr, and of course, their head coach is Marcus Freeman, and I think that they're going to do well again this season. So I have them ranked at number 2. And at number 1, I have Oregon. Now, people may question why I have Oregon ranked at number 1. I think that I think that they should be ranked at number 1 ahead of Ohio State because they have their head coach is Dan Lanning, and they have a lot of players returning this season, whereas Ohio State had a lot of players that went into the NFL draft last season. So that's why I'm ranking Oregon ahead of Ohio State. And Dante Moore will be their starting quarterback. And now Oregon does have some tough games coming up. I know their first game will be against Boise State, and I think that Oregon will win that game. And consequently, that if Boise State is actually ranked in the AP Top 25 preseason, I think that if they lose to Oregon, they will probably fall out, but they could potentially drop back in again. But I think that Oregon has a pretty good team this season. Now, they did lose their offensive coordinator and their defensive coordinator, who both went on to become head coaches. The offensive coordinator went to be the head coach at Kentucky, and I forget where their defensive coordinator went, but they promoted their some of their staff into their new offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator. So I I think that Oregon is going to be pretty good. Now, like I said, they do have some tough games. They do play Ohio State at Ohio State later in the season. I think their first toughest game is probably going to be against USC, and that game will be played in the Coliseum in Los Angeles. So that could potentially be a little bit of a tough game, but I still think Oregon will prevail in that game. And they also play I think they play Michigan also, and I know they play Washington at the end of the season, but I think Oregon could very easily be 11-1 or 12-0 at the end of this season. So that's why I have them ranked at number 1. That's going to wrap up this video. If you liked what you saw, please give the video a like down below and subscribe to the channel. If you would like to see one of the videos that I did last year, click on this video right here. Again, I want to thank you so much for watching, and I do have another video planned that should be coming out in the next few days, so stay tuned for that. In the meantime, stay safe, you be blessed, and bye for now.